Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf kuf chet. We are almost going to finish the seventh chapter of oh no, I'm sorry. We're finishing the seventh chapter of um Basra today and getting started with the eighth chapter. And it occurred to me, of course, when I read the beginning of the eighth chapter, that a lot of the stuff that we've been dealing with this these inheritance examples has all been a perfect lead-in, as is often the case. The lead-in at the end of the Gemara of the last chapter leads directly into the topic for the next chapter. So we're going to be talking a lot about inheritance over the coming weeks. So let's get started. We're at the two dots on Kuf Zayin Amabet, two lines up from the bottom of the page. So Mekabel alav Mekom Gader. You need to accept for when the seller sells the field, sells half of his field, he still needs to give, in addition to the half of the value of the field, right? The last thing we saw was that you have to give half the value of the field when you say half the field. He has to also give space in his own property, in addition to the property that he's giving to the other person that he's selling. He has to give space for a fence, right, and for some trenches. So we had a wide trench and a narrow trench. And the question is, we're just getting started. We had a narrow trench and a wide trench that needs to be provided by the seller to the buyer. And the question is what's the purpose? So we're going to get the details. So we're going to teach a brisa that has additional details. So time we had a brisa, charitz mi bachutz. We got a wide trench on the outer ring, protecting the person's field that you're selling the person a field. So the field that you're selling will have an outer ring that is the wide trench. Uben charitz mi bifnim, and then the inner trench is a narrower trench. And both of them are on the outside of the fence. So again, imagine your field, okay? I am selling you, well, let's see, imagine that I have a humongous field and I am selling you half of the field. So if I sell you the whole field, all I can give you is the entire field. Anything you want beyond that, if you want to put a fence, you got to put a fence on the field. But if I sell you half the field, then I am, and it's a field, so it's meant for being fenced in. So then I have to give you, in addition to the space that I'm giving you, the land that I'm giving you, I have to give you space on my property to put a fence. And so you would put not only a fence, but then outside the fence, you put a narrow trench. And outside the narrow trench, you put a wide trench. Now let's go through and we're going to explain why we need to do both of this. And that's the beginning, the top of Kuf Chet Amud Aleph. Today, Shalota He Chaya Kotzefes. Because the purpose is we don't want animals to jump over the fence and end up in your field. Now, if we had flat land, so then we would have to obviously raise the fence maybe higher than we can, or higher than it's reasonably possible to do. And so as a result, what we're going to do is we're going to make a fence, and then we're going to make trenches outside. So la'avid charetz. So why v'lo la'avid ben charetz? Why not make the wide trench and not the narrow trench? So Aidi Diravach Kaima Begave Vikavsa. So if it's sufficiently wide, well, then the animal has the ability to stand in it and jump into your property. Because basically the point is that if from especially if it's a wide space, and we're going to say that it's how wide it is. One second, did we say how wide it is? I think in the Mishnah. So yes, the wide trench is 6 tfachim, and the narrow trench is 3 tfachim. And so as a result, that we've got a 6 tfachim wide space. That's a wide enough space for an animal to sort of stand and then use that as a space in order to jump. So that's not going to work. So Avid ben
So
Char.
how does the width play a role in whether the animal can jump? If it's an area is elevated, so then the animal could jump over. But if you have a ditch that's very wide, how does that help the animal? The ditch there could be a ditch with 6 feet deep, and it
No,
can
no,
be
no. So
wide.
it's not meant to be. Well, I don't think that it's intended to be 6 feet deep. But however deep it is, the point is that because it's 6 tefachim wide, the footing in the bottom of the ditch is sufficient for the animal to use and leverage to get over the fence. Okay, that's the idea. I can't really give much more of an explanation. This is what the Gemara is saying. But when it's a narrow ditch, when it only has 3 tefachim of width to it, that is too narrow for a large animal, for a deer, for example, to get a good footing on that, in that ditch that it can use to jump. So then the question is, v'lavid ben charetz v'lo lavid charetz. If the point is that a narrow ditch is too narrow to be able to use to jump into the land, so why not just make the narrow ditch? And of course, the answer is exactly why you think, because Idi dekatin kaimen asfasei v'kavtza, because it's so narrow, it's only 3 tefachim wide. So now the animal stands outside those 3 tefachim and can jump over the 3 tefachim and the fence. So as a result, it's not going to be wide enough. So that's the idea. So Idi dekatin, okay. So now as a result, we have both pieces. We have a wide piece, an outer wide piece, and then an inner narrow piece. So the inner narrow piece is sufficiently narrow that you can't use that as a base for jumping. The outer wide piece is sufficiently wide, so if they stand outside the 2 trenches, it's too wide. And now, although technically, if the narrow trench were next to the fence, you'd be okay. The animal would be able to jump. Now that it's away from the fence, it's too far from the fence in order to make it work. So that's the explanation.
So how much space must there be between the narrow and the wide space?
That's the next line of the brisa that we're quoting. The kama ben charetz leven charetz. How much? You just translated the Gemara, and the answer is tefach. There's a tefach between the wide space and the narrow space. So let's go through it. Okay, we have a wide space of 6 tefachim. Then we have a 1 tefach for a boundary between the two trenches, and then we have a 3 tefach narrow trench, and so it's a total of 10 tefachim that are going to make the difference and going to span the space that will help prevent an animal from jumping over everything into your field.
Where were the dimensions? Does the Gemara say the dimensions? I don't see that.
Yeah, the last word of the last words of the Gemara of the Perek are the kama ben charetz leven charetz tefach. And if you want to know how wide the space is, just turn to Kuf Zayin Amabet, and it said the kama hu charetz, the end of the Mishnah. How wide is the regular trench? Shisha tefachim uven charetz shlosha. So we already had the width of the 2 trenches, and so now we have all the details. What?
I'm sorry, where does it say that? That's the end.
Last words of the Mishnah.
Oh, the Mishnah above above.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said.
Okay, I thought the end. Okay.
No worries. All right, Hadron alach base score, Hadron alach base score, Hadron alach base score, and now we turn to the Perek Yesh Nochlin. And let me just note the following psukim. I'll read them in English. Here is what the Torah says about inheritance. And to the children of Israel you shall speak, saying, this is in the connection with Benos Slavchad. When a man dies and he has no son, you shall pass his inheritance to his daughter. And if he has no daughter, you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, you shall give his inheritance to the brothers of his father. Note that we sort of skip the father. The father's not mentioned. And if there are no brothers of his father, you shall give his inheritance to his relative who is closest to him of his family, and he shall inherit it. This shall be for the children of Israel as a decree, as Hashem commanded Moshe. Okay, so that's the relevant psukim. So we're now going to highlight is a good Punnett Square. Again, my apologies for not having an outline for these dapim, but since I'm doing, since these 2 weeks I've been doing all of the dapim, and it's the Seres Yemei Tshuva, and time has been very precious. I haven't just have not had the opportunity to write them up. God willing, after Sukkot, I'll be back to doing that. As a reminder, when it comes to Sukkot, we'll be learning on at least the first days an hour before Mincha each day. But all right, let's get back to the eighth parak of Bava Basra. So yesh nochlin umanchilin. So there are those who inherit and get inherited, meaning that it's a two-way relationship. That if A inherits from B, B inherits from A. Okay, v'yesh nochlin v'lo manchilin. There are those who inherit but don't pass to the other, meaning A inherits from B, but B would not inherit from A. Manchilin v'lo nochlin. Well, that's the opposite side of that. In fact, the Rashbam says, again, there are those who cause others to inherit and will transfer to others, but won't themselves inherit. And so, take a look at the Rashbam. Manchilin v'lo nochlin. Heim otam de amru bahu nochlin v'lo manchilin. It's the same relationship where there was one side that inherits but doesn't cause the other side to inherit. Miklal de einchash de inach sha'elu nochlin otam v'lo manchilin. The implication is that there are those who will cause that will inherit and won't cause others to inherit. Lahain mikru manchilin v'lo nochlin, and that the flip side of the coin is those who cause others to inherit and don't themselves inherit. Why did it need to actually mention both sides? Because it's really both sides of the same coin. One of them could be just very easily derived from the other, and we will see that in a moment. Okay, so what are those cases? And then finally, there's a case, lo nochlin, v'lo manchilin. So there's those who will not inherit and will not cause others to inherit from them. Meaning, if the two people who are totally unrelated, they're not going to have any inheritance one way or the other. Okay, but there are other cases as well, and we'll see them momentarily. The elu nochlin umanchilin. So who are the cases where you inherit and it can go in either direction, meaning whoever dies first will cause the other person to inherit. So ha'av es habanim. So a father who passes away will cause his a father who survives his sons will inherit his sons. The habanim es ha'av, and the sons inherit from the father. The achim min ha'av, and the brothers will inherit if they're brothers from the same father. So nochlin umanchilin. In each of these cases, they will inherit and cause the other person to inherit. V'achen min ha'av. Let's take a look at the Rashbam, last of the narrow lines at the end of that line. V'achen min ha'av. Kagon Ruvain v'Yosef. Imagine Reuven and Yosef, who are Bnei Yaakov, right? We know that they're the children of Yaakov. Afal pi shehein mileah umirachel, even though Reuven is Leah's child and Yosef is Rachel's child, Yorshin zed zeh. When one of them passes away, the other will inherit. Bishvil shehein achen, because they are brothers. V'kagon shemes Yaakov avian. And that's in a situation where their father has already predeceased them. Aval im Yaakov kiyem. But if Yaakov was still alive, who kodim? The father comes first. This is important to note because we're going to be discussing that over the course of the day. V'kigon she'ein lahem banim. And in this case, we're dealing where they don't have their own sons, because before the any brothers would inherit, and before any father would inherit from a son, the children of the deceased, if they exist, will inherit from them first. V'davka achim min ha'av. And by the way, it is only brothers from the father. The mishpachas av huya mishpacha. That the father's family is the one that's called family. Kida as we are going to derive, that's the true family in any situation. All right. So that is the situations, 3 situations of people who inherit and cause others to inherit from them. That's a two-way street. So what about the next category? Those who cause to inherit but don't themselves inherit. Ha'ish es imo.
So you're saying the father inherits from the
children,
one of the brothers, his sons, but one of those brothers before the brother inherits from the other brother.
Correct. So if we have Reuven, Yaakov, and Yosef, so Reuven, if we'll say Reuven, Shimon, and Yosef and Yaakov. If Reuven dies, and Yaakov is still alive, well, then Yaakov will inherit before Shimon and Yosef. Okay? All right. So, Ha'ish es imo. So now we get to the situations where the inheritance goes in one direction. So a man will inherit his mother. Va'ish es ishto. A man will inherit his wife's possessions. Ubnei achayos. Now, what is this bnei achayos? Nochlin velo manchilin. So Rashbam gives an initial explanation, but the second Rashbam will cancel that and give us a second Rashbam, a second explanation. So let's take a look in the Rashbam and see what he says. Uvnei achayos, 1, 2, 3, 7 lines down in the medium wide lines of the Rashbam. The sister, again, literally it means the sons of the sisters. But what exactly is that situation? De ben nochel es achosimo. A son will inherit from the sister of his mother. Sharei huba mikoach ha'em. Because he will inherit through the strength of his mother. Ve'ilu mesa dodaso b'chayai imo. That if his aunt dies while his mother's still alive, yorshasa, his mother will inherit. V'gamhu yoresh es imo, and then he'll inherit from his mother when his mother passes away. Nimsa shebo yado nichse dodaso, and so we'll find that eventually the possessions of the aunt will end up going to the nephew. V'lo manchilin the kishemet habein enu manchil la'achot imo. When the son dies, he does not cause the sister of his mother to inherit, because even his mother doesn't inherit from him. El lekrove aviv. What matters is the relatives of his father. The mishpachas aim eina kruya mishpacha, because the family of the mother is not considered family. V'od da'achos imo heich tireshnu. How can the sister of the mother possibly inherit? Halo hi ba mikoach achosa. The only power she has to inherit is through her sister. Shehi imo shelzeh, who's the mother of the deceased. Veloha aim yuchol liyorsho. And even the mother doesn't have the ability to inherit from her son. Kida amran ha'ish es imo. That the son inherits the mother, but the mother doesn't inherit the son. Nocha velo manchil. A son from his mother inherits, but doesn't cause others to inherit. Kal v'chomer shehi lo tirash as ben achosa. Certainly the aunt is not going to inherit from her nephew, ba'achayos min ha'av, when we're and by the way, we're all talking about where they are sisters from the father, Myri. Aval achayos min ha'im, if they were just sisters from the mother, ein nechda ben achota yoreshota, then even the nephew has no chance to inherit from his mother's sister from her own mother. Meaning that if they shared a mother but not a father, so then those two sisters would not inherit from one another, because they would only demishpachas aimhu, because they are only the sisters from the mother, and that's not considered family. Now here comes the other alternative explanation, and this, oddly enough, even though he has provided it second, is the explanation that Rashbam thinks is the most likely explanation. And if I were to be trying to go as quickly as possible, we wouldn't have even bothered with the first explanation.
Where is this Dibur Matkil send of the Rashbam?
We are, well, I'm not going to, the Dibur Maskil was 9 lines down in the medium wide lines, and we are at the very beginning of a line, and the beginning of the line is the abbreviation Lamed Aleph for Lishna Achrina.
What was the first one? What was just the Dibur Matkil? What was it? I don't
Below Manchilin and Ubnei Achios Noah. We've done 2 Rashbams. The first Rashbam we did was Bnei Achios Nochlin below Manchilin, and then we did below Manchilin. So those are the 2 Rashbams that we're doing, and right now we're at Lishna Achrina. So Ubnei Achos, Ubnei Achoto. No, that it's really the children, the sisters' sons, and their mother's brother. So, okay, shall Ruvain, okay, Bnei Achot, Bnei Achoto shall Ruvain. So what is Bnei Achot? Bnei Achoto shall Ruvain. Kagon Bnei Dina, Nochlin Oto, Shahare Dina Yoreshes as Ruvain. Right, so Dina can cause her children to inherit from Ruvain, Acheha, her brother, Ubaneha, but her children, Dina's children, Ban Mikocha, they only have her strength. Avo lo manchilin leRuvain, they will not result in Ruvain inheriting from them. So if God forbid one of the nephews of Ruvain from Dina dies before Ruvain, Ruvain will not inherit. Shahare Ruvain mikoach achosa Dina v'alirash otan. That he will only inherit because of his relationship with his sister Dina. V'halo Dina atzma in your shatan. And Dina herself can't inherit from her children. Her sons will not cause her to inherit. Kida amran da'aim eina nochelet et bana, because a mother doesn't inherit her children. Ella krove bala. It's only the relatives of her husband, Sheldina, that were the husband of Dina, that are going to inherit from her sons. Yorshin Espaneha will inherit from her sons. The mishpachas av yoresh, the lo mishpachas aim, because it's the father's family that inherits and not the mother's family. V'zen nira be'enai. This is what I think is the right explanation. Mishum de Kitani Seifa, because we are about to learn the other flip side of the coin, and the flip side of the coin mentions Ha'isha Espana, the mother doesn't inherit her sons. Va'isha Espala, a wife doesn't inherit her husband. The Achei Ha'aim
doesn't say does not. It says Ha'isha et banaha.
Yes, the last words of the line that are not being quoted by the Rashbam is Nochalin velo manchilin, that these people inherit, but they don't bequeath. So the point is that a man inherits his mother, but he does not bequeath to his mother. So that is the precise point of the Rashbam is quoting an aspect of the short, brief words of the Mishnah and not the entire line. The key point for us is the next words. Ha'em manchilin velo nochlin. The brothers of the mother cause to inherit, but will not themselves inherit. So the brothers of the mother will cause their nephews, the children of the sister, to inherit, but they will not be able to inherit because, again, the sister is not going to inherit from her children, and so as a result, there's no possibility for the brother inheriting from those children. The kol hanach tlasa shaminin lahu mahanach tlas, and these 3 are derivable from the first 3. Dahach Bava denochlin below manchilin, which was the category of inheriting but not causing others to inherit. As we are going to explain in the Gemara, that these correspond directly to each other. Because we're going to ask in the Gemara, hainu de bnei achot, that it's the same situation. V'hilkot garsinan bnei achot, and therefore we should recognize that the language of our Mishnah really should be bnei achot, which is what instead of bnei achayot, dahainu nami the achei ha'em manchilin as ben achotam, because the brothers of the mother inherit the children of their sister. V'lo nachalin, and they don't cause others to inherit. V'inami garsinan b'nei achayot, or we could say that the language should be b'nei achayot. Ika leferushe b'nei achayot, kolomar b'nei achyotav shel adam, the children of the sisters of a particular person. Nochalin, they inherit oto. Avalo manchilin, but they won't cause him to inherit. Dehu eno yorshan, because he will not inherit them. So that is the Rashbam. And so the bottom line is the three categories are a man and his mother. So the man will inherit, but not the mother. And a man and his wife, the man will inherit, but not the wife. And a man and his nephews through his sister. And again, the sons of the sister will inherit, but the man will not inherit his nephews through his sister.
The Rashbam here says V'hilchot garsina b'nei achot, and then later in ends kaloma b'nei achayot. So it seems that he could accept both the versions.
Yes, exactly. In the end, he says that you can have both versions. Exactly. Both we actually have in our Gemara as b'nei achayot, but again, he thinks that b'nei achot is probably the better language. But that's again, he can still read his preferred interpretation into this situation. All right. So Ha'isha Espanaha. So now the last category. So let's go into the. I'm sorry. So now let's do the opposite direction, right? So now we're doing the opposite direction. These are the people who are not going to inherit, even though they will cause the other person to inherit from them. And we are 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 lines down in the Mishnah. Third word from the end of the line. Ha'isha es baneha, v'ha'isha es bala, v'achei ha'em. Right. So a woman, will not inherit her sons. A wife will not inherit her husband, and the brother of the mother will not inherit from the children of that mother. So manchilin, v'lo nochlin, all of these bequeath, but they themselves do not inherit. All right. Now, who doesn't inherit at all? The achim min ha'em. If you go to brothers of a mother, but they have different fathers, well then lo nochlin v'lo manchilin. Well, then they're not going to cause to inherit or bequeath, because heck, they're effectively not related, as we saw, and certainly two people who are totally unrelated, they will not inherit or cause the other to inherit from them.
But they inherit from the mother, don't they?
No. I mean, they can inherit from the mother, but they can't inherit to each other. That's the point, right? They will each inherit from their mother, but they will not cause the other to inherit. So again, let's do with
so therefore, the mother that essentially one cannot inherit from his stepmother, basically, or is they have the same mother.
No, they have the same mother. They have different fathers. So
both of them can inherit from the mother then.
Right. Both of them would inherit from the mother. But now the mother's passed away. And now one of them, and even if the mother was still alive, but we said that they're inheriting from the mother. But now they inherit from the mother. Now one of them passes away. Well, they don't have the same father, so they're not considered part of the same family tree for inheritance. So one of them is not going to inherit the other, even though they had the same mother. Okay?
Different fathers.
They had different fathers, and so as a result, they do not inherit from one another. So, Maishna de Katani Ha'av es Habanim Beresha. Now, the Gemara asks a question. Why are we telling the story of a tragedy? Why are we saying that the father inherits his children, his sons? Why? That's an unusual situation. Lisnei habanim es ha'av beresha. We should learn that the sons inherit the father first. Chada, one reason to do it, because we don't like to begin with sad situations. In fact, this is a law associated with the Torah reading. We try to begin the Torah reading, each aliyah, with something good. We try not to start. Indeed, in Parshas was it Re'eh, when we adjust where the end of the first aliyah is in order to do that. So va'od kediksiv ish ki yamut ben uven ein lo. When a man dies and he has no son, that implies that the sons come first. So why? And that's the first aspect of what the Torah tells us. So why are you telling us? So both from a psukim perspective and from a positive aspect of the story perspective, we should be learning about sons inheriting from fathers.
So also, I understand we don't like to end on Piraniot either.
That's true too. 100%. Vitana, so why did we do it? Because us yalei madrasha chavivalei. Because fathers inheriting from sons is not explicit in the pasuk. Indeed, when you go through the psukim, as I mentioned earlier, the psukim specifically says, when a man dies and he has no son, you shall pass his inheritance to his daughter. And if he has no daughter, you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, you shall give his inheritance to the brothers of his father. We skipped over. There was no reference to the father. And we said that the father comes before the brothers. So there was no mention of the father. So the answer, so the point is we learn out the fact that a father inherits a son from a drasha. And so as a result, that's why learning from drashot is what's dear to each and every one of us, because it requires rabbinic thought, and it's like a puzzle. And so whether you think of it from a puzzle perspective or you think about it from the fact that the rabbis had to come up with it, that's why it comes first. Umay drasha. So what was the drasha? The Tanya, well, we have a brisa, she'ero, that you should give the family, give the inheritance to the relative. Zeha'av, that refers to the father. Melamed sha'av kodem la'achin, and this teaches that the father precedes the brother. Well, 1 second, how do you know that the father precedes the brother? Maybe the brothers precede the father. So Yachol Yehei Kodem Lebain. In fact, maybe the father precedes even the son. So Talmud Lomar Hakarov Kodem, that we say Hakarov, the relative that is closer. So which one is closer, a father or a son? And the person's children are definitely closer, and so as a result, they go before the father in succession. So again, so that means that Ephraim and Manasseh will inherit Yosef before Yaakov does. All right. Uma re'isa l'rabos es habein ulahotzi es ha'ach. How do you know that the son comes first and not the brother? Maybe the brothers of somebody should be the primary heir, and the son should come after the brothers. Marba ani es haben. No, Marabe ani es haben. Sheben kam takas aviv liya'ada ulasteyachuza. That no, when a son comes in the place of his father in two situations. The first is a situation of yiyud. This is a situation where a man purchases a Jewish female maidservant, and now he has the right to marry her. But if he chooses not to marry her, the Torah says that his son has the right to marry her. And so only his son, not his brothers, not his father, no one else has that right. And so as a result, we're going to say that that's category number one. And category number two is steyachuza, that if in fact a man were to make a field that he inherited and has been part of his family and is, is subject to Yovel, if he made that field hektish, then if that field goes to Yovel and nobody has redeemed the field from hektish, well, then it remains always part of the property of the Kohanim. It is no longer the property of anybody else. However, if the man himself or his son, not his brother, not his father, no one else, if either of them do the redemption, well, then it goes back into his family's heritage. And so as a result, in those two situations, only a son stands in for his father. And so as a result, sons are better. Tosos adds, by the way, a third category. Take a look at Shekain Kam Tachas Aviv Liyadal Usadei Achuza, right? The Huadin, Dahani Milu Limanket, Nami Le'eved Ivri. That if you buy an Eved Ivri, and then, and if somebody buys an Eved Ivri and then passes away while the Eved Ivri is within their first 6 years, or the Eved Ivri has had his ear poked and now is supposed to continue until Yovel, but now the person passes away, that ends. The relationship ends unless there is a son. Only a son will inherit the Eved Ivri. And so as a result, that's, again, a unique situation. Others wonder, well, why didn't it say that? My initial thought is that maybe the reason for the Eved Ivri is along the lines of the Yehud example, and therefore, and too similar to the Yehud example, because they both deal with the halachot of a Jewish slave. But in any event, so whereas there are, at least at the moment, we're saying it's 2-0. There are two situations where a son stands in for the father, and 0 situations where the brother stands in for the brother. But of course, we all know that there's a situation where the brother stands in for another brother. Adarabba, Merabba Anias Ha'ach, Shekain Kam Takas Achiv Liyibum.
But you have Yibum, don't you?
Exactly. That's exactly why I said it. I triggered you to think of Yibum. So the point is a brother has Yibum. So maybe we should give the brother preference. So the Gemara says back to that, no way. Klum yesh Yibum el b'makom she'ein bain. You don't have Yibum if there's a son. Meaning that if there's a son, so then there is no aspect of Yibum. So the whole idea of Yibum emphasizes an aspect that a son is preferable. Because if there was a son, there wouldn't be Yibum in the first place. Haba makom sheyesh ben ein Yibum, right? So now
wait, that would be a son of one of the two brothers. But if neither of the brothers has a son, then there is Yibum.
Yes, I understand.
We're talking about the
question the question is the deceased brother, right? Whose brother is going to inherit him, right? The only time he's going to do Yibum is if there are no children for that deceased brother.
Right.
But if there are children of the deceased brother, there's no Yibum. So we're going to now say that when, again, we have Menashe and Reuven inheriting from Yosef, and you're going to tell me that notwithstanding that Menashe's existence prevents Reuven from doing Yibum, we're going to say that Menashe is not going to inherit? That's ridiculous. Menashe is clearly the preferred item because his existence prevents Reuven from doing Yibum with Yosef's widow. So that is the point that the Gemara is making, right?
Where's the Hava Amina that Yosef, that Reuven would even do Yibum with Yosef's widow? Then we never have that.
Of course he would. They're brothers from the same mother.
But he doesn't do Yibum with his mother.
Yeah. Yosef's wife is not the mother of Reuven.
No, you were saying Yaakov. You said Yaakov's. Yosef and...
If I said Yaakov, my apologies. Yosef, confusing. I didn't mean to mention Yaakov. Let's ignore Yaakov. Yosef, I thought I said Yosef. Yosef and Reuven. And Menashe. They're the three people in our story. No Yaakov, no Yaakov. Yaakov's passed away already.
Right.
Yosef, Reuven, and Menashe. Yosef dies. There's Menashe and Reuven that are left.
Right.
Menashe and Reuven are left. Does Reuven do Yibum? No, because Menashe exists. So how can we possibly say that the right of Yibum somehow will give Reuven the right to inherit when the existence of Menashe prevents Reuven from doing Yibum? That's the point. That's what the Gemara is saying. So initially we say, Reuven could potentially stand in for Yosef because Reuven might marry Yosef's widow if he has no children. The Gemara, and therefore maybe that shows that Reuven should have priority over Yosef's children for inheritance. So the Gemara says, no way, because if Yosef had any children, Reuven would never do Yibum in the first place. So the only time that Reuven would ever potentially stand in for Yosef is when Yosef has no children.
But isn't that the situation that we're not?
No, it's not the situation.
No,
the
but isn't that the situation that we're trying to create?
I'm sorry, we have to move on.
But we're trying.
I'm happy to stay late. I'm happy to stay late, but we have to move on. Okay. Time and Deika High Pircha. So the Gemara says, so you're telling me that the only problem here is the only reason that Menashe is going to inherit from Yosef instead of Reuven is because we have the fact that our argument regarding Yibum doesn't work because Menashe's existence prevents Reuven from doing Yibum. Halav haki havamino ach adif. Without that counter proof, I would have thought that a brother would take precedence. Typically, why not say Dehacha tarti hacha dehacha tarti v'hacha chada? Why not tell me that we have two ways that a son stands in for a father, namely with respect to yiyud of an ama ivriya, right, of a Jewish maidservant, and with respect to a redemption of a steyachuza, whereas a brother only has one way that he stands in for his brother, and that's yibum. So why not say 2 beats 1? So the answer is steyachuza gufa mehai taimahu de kakaimale latana. The point is that the whole, it's all one explanation, because the whole reason that we ever say that a son has the special right to redeem the ancestral land, that itself is derived from this very point. Klum yesh yibum el b'makom she'ein bein. Because do we ever have yibum when there's a son? Only when there's no son we do it. Ha yesh bein, when there is a son, ein yibum. There is no yibum. So Rashbam here goes through the Gemara elsewhere that we have in Erechim to do this. But all right, you know what? We have a little bit of time. We'll do that. This Rashbam. So Umashani. So the second line in the Rashbam, Kuf Tet Amid Aleph. So Umashani, and the Gemara answers now. We're going to go through the details of this explanation, meaning that the lesson that we learned about Yibum is precisely how we know that the son gets to do the ancestral land redemption, and therefore you can't focus on it's not a 2 versus 1 without the answer that we just gave. So let's take a look and we'll see. Umashani, and we answer Mishum Disteyachuza Gufa Lo Kaimalan b'Mesechas Erekin Sheyeheya Ben b'Makom Ha'av Tvei Me'achiv Elamahach Pircha. The whole way that we derive in Erechin the fact that a son stands in for his father more so than a brother when it comes to redeeming a steyachuza is based on this question of the fact that Yibum is not done when a son exists. The Parchinan Hasam, because we ask over there, Klum yesh Yibum, is there any Yibum, etc., etc. Kulu, right? The Amrina Nami Hasam, because we say over there, Mara Isa Larabos as Haben, Ulahotzi as Ha'ach. in there, when we're discussing steyachuza, where we don't know what the law is with respect to steyachuza, we only know that a brother stands in for yibum and a son stands in for yeyud. So we have one going in each direction. So how do I know that the lesson that tells us that somebody else is able to redeem a field should apply to the son and not to the brother? Marbe ani et haben shekain kam tachas aviv liyada. Adarabba, marba ani es ha'ach shekain kam tachas achiv liyibum. How in the world am I going to, how do I know to preference a son because of his rights of yeyud over a brother and his rights of yibum? Umishani, and we answer there, klum yesh yibum. Do we say that there is any yibum except when there's no son? So obviously, when there's a son, there's no yibum, and so as a result, sons are preferable to brothers. Sha'arei lo matzinu kasav beferish, because there is no explicit pasuk when it comes to stei achuza. She'ehei haben kam tachas aviv tvei me'achiv eluliyada. The only time that we see that a son is preference to a brother is with respect to yeyud of a amavriya, of a Jewish maidservant. Shegam ha'ach kam taktav, that even a liyibum, because a brother stands in for the deceased brother when it comes to yibum. The nimtza dehachachada v'hachachada. So without anything more, it seems equal brothers and sons. Who? The shar dvarim shaben kam tachas aviv tfei me'achiv kagon stei achuza the evet ivri, and the whole idea that a son will stand in for his father when it comes to a stei achuza and evet ivri, the Maseches Kiddushin, which we learned about Maseches Kiddushin, the kadimas have been la'ach benachla, and the preference of a son to a brother when it comes to inheritance, kulu maisinan lahu midin yeida. It all gets derived from the concept of yiyud. The fact that the son gets preferential treatment with respect to this slave, Jewish slave woman that gets purchased by the father, that is how we know all of these other laws. Midin yiyud lachud. Because in that one verse, in that situation, the Torah specifically tells us that the son can stand in for the father. The ilo de mashaninan da afilu legabi yibum ein ha'ach kam taktav kamo beno. And if we didn't have that, we would think that yibum, that the brother can be in place of his son, the klum yesh yibum elabim makom she'ein bain, that we don't have the whole concept of yibum other than when there is no son. So lo hava matzina l'rebuye ben shiakum tachas aviv. Without yeyud, we would never have the basis to say that a son should come in place of his father. L'klum tvei me'achiv, to say that he's somehow better than his brother, better than the deceased brother. Because again, both the brother and the son each have one advantage to them. And we're going to ask the bein ubas v'ach kamo shesedurin beparsha likadmu kulo la'av. Well, 1 second, maybe both the children and the brother should come before the father. Shaharei kulam krovim lemeis, because tvei me'aviv, because all of them have a preferential to the father. Shehem kam taktav liyada b'liyibum. When it comes to the children or the brother of the deceased, all of them have the opportunity to stand in their place. Whether the sons have the place to do yiyud, or the brother has the chance to do yibum. So maybe we should have that the father gets last. It should go sons, brothers, and then father. Aval ha'av einu kam taktav lakum. But the father has no situation where he stands in for his son. So maybe a father should be the last one to inherit. Well, if you want to know why the father isn't the last one to inherit, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. So I'm going to turn off the recording and we can go over that in further detail.